For nearly 80 years, the global operating system ran on a quiet assumption of stability. Nations operated under agreed-upon rules, international institutions mediated disputes, and the US dollar anchored global trade. That arrangement is officially over. World leaders at recent security conferences have openly conceded that the post-war framework has broken down. You don't need a diplomatic summit to feel the shift. Bank failures, digital noise, and fractured societies dominate the daily reality. Populations now instinctively distrust the institutions that built that old order. According to recent global surveys, nearly 60% of citizens view information with suspicion by default, placing traditional media and governments at the absolute bottom of public confidence. This widespread skepticism makes it difficult for any institution to manage a crisis. When the majority of a population stops believing the information provided, the baseline of cooperation required for a global order to function begins to dissolve. When the Department of Justice released the Epstein Files, they exposed a specific mechanism behind this institutional decay. Jeffrey Epstein operated as a global power broker. He helped facilitate international security agreements, negotiated arms sales for Israel, and established secret back channels between major powers during the Syrian civil war. He was a central figure in a transnational network, often called the Epstein class, an elite group that used secrecy and manipulation to influence global politics for decades. When the public sees international back channels and arms deals operating outside of official rules, the core contract of transparency is broken. This is why major institutions are losing their social license to operate, the basic public trust required to function effectively. The headlines of systemic corruption and institutional collapse we see today are predictable indicators. They align with the patterns observed when an empire enters the final stage of its cycle. Investor Ray Dalio has tracked macroeconomic data across the last 500 years to understand how world powers rise and fall. This timeline illustrates the pattern. A nation ascends by prioritizing education and innovation, reaches its peak by dominating global trade and establishing a reserve currency, and then moves into a period of decline. Look at the Dutch Empire in the 17th century. They controlled a quarter of global innovation before drowning their economy in excessive debt to fund unprofitable overseas ventures. The British Empire followed the same trajectory. They captured 40% of global exports and established the pound sterling as the world's reserve currency, before crippling themselves with the massive debts of 2 world wars. History shows a recurring sequence. No empire has escaped this cycle, suggesting that the current global breakdown follows a documented historical path. Data shows the United States and the post-1945 order have entered what Dalio categorizes as Stage 6, the final phase of the cycle, defined by 3 specific conditions. The first condition is uncontrolled debt and the printing of fiat money. This accelerated in 1971, when the United States severed the dollar's connection to physical gold, allowing for increased borrowing. The second condition is internal conflict. As wealth concentrates at the top, it drives political polarization and the rise of populism as groups fight over a shrinking economic pie. The third condition is the emergence of a rising challenger. A weakened incumbent with heavy military commitments faces direct competition, visible today in China's massive industrial output and global shipping dominance. When infinite debt creation, domestic political paralysis, and a powerful foreign rival overlap, they create a feedback loop of inflation and social unrest. The economic friction and the pervasive spread of misinformation are symptoms of a superpower that is losing its competitive edge on the global stage. As global rules break down, they are replaced by power politics. These conflicts are waged through trade tariffs, technology embargoes, and the weaponization of capital. In Stage 6, facing these crises, the central bank often prints massive amounts of fiat money. As a result, paper currency rapidly loses purchasing power. This chart tracks the value of paper money against hard assets during historical shocks. You can see sharp increases in the value of commodities and gold during the crises of 1933, 1971, and 2020, as paper currency devalued. A strategy used in past cycles involves shifting capital away from institutional paper assets. To preserve long-term value, wealth often moves into tangible, physical property like real estate, agricultural commodities, and precious metals. Effective capital preservation also involves geographic diversification. This means moving investments toward rising markets in Asia that are currently in an ascending phase of their economic growth. The decline of the post-1945 order follows a sequence observed across 5 centuries. Understanding these patterns provides a way to assess the risks and protect assets as the system transitions into its next phase.